What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Crush City Territory. My name is Chandler and here with Tyler Stafford. And Tyler, I feel like I'm obligated to ask this because we're two young, hip people that have a podcast in the year 2025. What do you feel about the Luka Doncic AD trade?
Yeah, I woke up to that news this morning. I watched my first basketball game of the year last night. I fell asleep to the Rockets losing by 30 or something. And so that was my entire intake of basketball so far this year. I just keep seeing everyone trying to put it in terms of other sports, of like, oh, this is the craziest trade ever. It seems weird. I don't understand it, which feels like feels like most people's reaction to it. It does not make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I was at the Rockets game last night. Got to watch Ben Simmons, who apparently plays for the Nets now. He comes off the bench for the Nets. He got picked first overall once upon a time. Went to a nice school. He went there to film a documentary. He didn't really go to LSU to like take classes or anything. He filmed a documentary there for 6 months. But he came off the bench. Trendon Watford played for the Nets, another LSU alum. The Rockets just got housed. Good God. And then Reed Shepherd got in like in the third quarter. When they're putting Reed Shepherd in, like, it's over. It's blouses. So he got to make some threes. It was cool. Everyone kind of patted him on the head. But Jim Crane was courtside. Jim Crane was courtside last night at the Rockets game. He got up a couple of times, watched him get on the phone. So my
moves.
I thought is, oh man, Scott Boras is calling. He's going to take him away from this courtside game. And nothing's happened. So if it was Scott Boras, they couldn't get anything done. So we sit here today, Alex Bregman, as of Sunday afternoon when we were recording this, Alex Bregman remains unsigned. One of the Astros fallback plans, Jorge Polanco, has signed. He signed with the Seattle Mariners, got $7.75 million guaranteed on a one-year deal with a mutual option for 2026 based off how many plate appearances he will accrue. I had said on the last podcast, and I believed it to be true, that I thought the Astros would sign one of Jorge Polanco or Alex Bregman. That was kind of their plan. My informed speculation is I don't think they thought Jorge Polanco would get that much money. My understanding is they got outbid by the Mariners for a guy that had knee surgery in October on his left knee, but has been fully cleared to play. 100% going into spring training, should be ready for the start of the regular season. The Astros, if they signed him, were going to play him at second base primarily, put Jose Altuve in left field, kind of shore up their infield defense and solve the problem in left. So now with Jorge Polanco gone, Tyler, is it, in your mind, is it Alex Bregman or bust, or have you scoured trade rumors or anything that could tell you, that could give you like another name to throw at me to see if the Astros can make this work?
Yeah, we're running out of people and running out of time at this point, right? I mean, spring training's in like 3 weeks. I've been talking to some people. Baseball, it's not like football or other sports where you have to come in and like learn the playbook or whatever, right? Like,
right.
Alex Bregman knows how to play third base. It's not like he needs spring training other than just going through the motions of doing spring training, getting reps, those types of things. But it is getting awfully close, man. I mean, I've been between jobs and we had to push off getting, teeth cleaned and health insurance. So I'm hoping he's okay over there, I'm sure he's doing fine. But yeah, it's very weird. I keep waiting for something to happen, and it just seems like it's going to be one of those things that goes up right until the season starts at this point.
Yeah, I think the thing about spring training that, and we will talk about this when we get down to spring training in a week or so. Spring training there are a lot of things in spring training that you can do. You don't have to come to the facility to do. Like Alex Bregman can take as much batting practice as he wants at his training facility in Arizona. He can field as many ground balls as he wants, do all those drills. All you need is someone to hit you said ground balls, someone to throw you batting practice, basically some pals to be around to help you out. Where it really gets into it is the live pitching, and he probably needs to be in camp before games start, obviously, before, to see some live pitching, track some live pitching. But as someone that's covered Bregman since he was a freshman at LSU, like I don't know how he's handling this, because he's always the guy that wants to be the first one in spring training. He wants to be the first guy there. He's a baseball rat. Like it would surprise.
Lunch pail guy.
Brings his lunch pail to work. A gritty dirt ball. We're just getting
a real Wes Welker type.
Bill Belichick's at UNC somewhere, just having some binoculars on him. I wonder how he's handling just the fact that we are getting close to spring training and he doesn't have a home. I think we're at the point now where he kind of has an idea. We've talked about the 5 teams that remain in on him, and I think he's probably allowed himself to think, all right, I'm probably going to be in one of these 5 places. So maybe that helps him a little bit, but yeah, you're right. This is dragging, I think, longer than all of us, or maybe many of us, expected. I thought, and Dana Brown has said it, they thought Alex Bregman would be long gone by now, long signed. And, speaking of Dana Brown saying that, we talked on the podcast last time about our last pod about Dana Brown's tendencies to be candid. He does a very poor job of hiding what he really feels. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He tells the truth. Tyler, have you followed much of like what Dana has said on the record about the Bregman situation?
I see your tweets. I don't know if that counts. I haven't been invited to any of these Zoom meetings. So, following along. But like you said, he seems like as shocked as anybody that it's still out there. And he also doesn't seem particularly motivated or excited about it.
He's not. And if you listen to everything he says, I think tepid is probably too light of a word to describe how he has talked about Alex Bregman. To me, he just seems unenthusiastic about the whole thing. He is talking like someone that doesn't want to do this. Now, does that mean that is true? Does that mean that for the first time in his 2.5 years as general manager, he is, doing well about hiding his emotions and hiding what he really feels? I'm not sure. But if you look at some of what he has said in the last, week and a half, he's made it a point to call this a long shot. He's made it a point to say, we're having internal conversations. He's made it a point to say, it's close to spring training. We thought Alex Bregman would be gone by now, but I guess we kind of have to check in now that he's not signed anywhere. He even went so far on a Zoom after Ryan Presley's trade to say that Scott Boras had texted him and he had not texted Scott Boras back. Basically to say that he owed
left him on red.
That's gotta be unflattering for Scott Boras to get left on red by Dana Brown. Like, you're Scott Boras, man. Like, you feel like he can get a call back.
Yeah.
So all that being said, like it has prompted the question for me, like, who inside the Astros, like, who really wants Alex Bregman? And I think we kind of can all draw our conclusions here. It was the guy sitting courtside last night at the Rockets game. When you're talking about the sort of offer that the Astros have on the table for Alex Bregman, 6 years, $156 million, that'd be the largest contract in franchise history. You don't give out the largest contract in franchise history if you're the Astros, if you're the Blue Jays, if you're the Pirates, if you're the Rays. You don't give that out without ownership input. So there's always been a lot said about Jim Crane's involvement in baseball operations, and everyone wants to kind of excoriate that. They don't like that he's involved. But I'm here to tell you that in this situation, the owner would be involved in 30 of 30 franchises. When you're talking about the biggest contract in franchise history, you're talking about money and years, you're talking about a franchise icon like Bregman. It seems to me, and again, this is purely, I'm going off of what Dana Brown has said on the record. I'm going off some of the reporting that's been out there from other outlets, some of the reporting that I've done. It does seem to me that if this is going to get done, it is going to be something that Jim Crane spearheads. That Jim Crane, this is going to be something that if it gets done, Jim Crane wants it done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, that's not unique to Crane and the Astros. I mean, if you're handing out this size of a contract, that's what it's going to be. But I assume, I mean, obviously that's why Boris is really good at what he does, is that he knows he just has to get one of these owners to say, you know what, I want this guy more than anybody else. And I mean, it could be as simple as you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed tomorrow morning and go, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of reading this in the news every day. Let's just get it over with. And somebody signs him and it goes that quickly. But yeah, I mean, it's wild to me that he's still jobless at this point.
And I wonder, maybe in a more macro sense, a grander sense, we talked about, Jim has been involved in baseball operations decisions since they quote unquote parted ways with James Click after the 2022 season. We don't need to relitigate the winter of 2022 of Rafael Montero and Jose Abreu. Actually, we will do that a little bit later. But right now, we don't have to. We know what happened then. They're still paying for that. In general, Tyler, like, how do you feel about owners like Jim Crane, a guy that this is true? Jim Crane is, if not the most successful sports owner in Houston history, he's right up there. I don't even know who you would put him on par with. Very few owners in the history of this city have overseen the success that Jim Crane has overseen with the Astros. At the same time, we have seen how things in the last couple of years have gone a little bit astray with him having some influence. So I guess overall, what have you made of, as a fan that's just kind of consuming the game from a different lens than I am, what have you made of Jim's increasing involvement in baseball operations decisions?
I mean, I would say on a sliding scale, you would prefer to have your owner be interested in the sport that they own a team of, right? Like, it is better to have an owner who knows who the players are and who cares and is following and is interested in the game. Most of the success that the Astros had obviously was when Crane had a more hands-off approach, and even the success after the sign stealing and all of that, after Luna left, and all of those things, and Crane really came in and put his hands on the team. So much of the success was just a continuation of what was already built, right? Like, there hasn't been a real move. I mean, really, there really has not been a move that you could point to that you could say, oh, look, the Astros have done this in the last 5 years. This was a great move. This is, something that really took them over the top, or, something like that. There just hasn't been anything like that. That's not to say that that's not coming. So much of that is just draft picks and even like small free agent signings, right? Like, you look back at, Michael Brantley, that first contract, it was kind of unheralded, and then turns out to be a humongous asset for the Astros. Like, those things can happen. They took swings at Montero and Abreu, and it's not like when that happened, everybody was just it wasn't like the Luka trade, right? It wasn't like the entire internet's like, what are you doing, right? Like, it made sense. So it's not like the decisions have been bad or have been difficult to understand, but sometimes you want somebody making decisions that maybe you don't understand, or they're ahead of you, right? Like, if all of Twitter is following along and is like thumbs up, thumbs down on this, you're probably 3 steps behind the people who are really making moves in the game. And that's just really hard to do if you're not, fully invested. And again, that's not to say that Crane can't make those types of decisions, but it just hasn't happened yet.
I'll give you two. When you were talking about there hasn't been like that one move in the last 5-7 years that you look at and it's like, oh man, this is going to put the Astros. Like there is not one of those, but I'll give you two that I just thought about. One of which Jim Crane should have had a heavy hand in. One that he probably did not. Both happened in 2022. Remember when they traded their starting center fielder at the trade deadline for a reliever and a young catcher no one had ever heard of? And everyone was like, what is going on? Why are they trading Miles Straw, who clubhouse favorite, a Dusty Baker favorite, a guy that was playing well that year, but they got Phil Maton, who became a very integral part of their postseason bullpen 3 years in a row. And they have Yainer Diaz, who is emerging as one of the best offensive catchers in baseball, maybe with a little more seasoning, can be one of the best all-around players in baseball. That's the kind of move that you look at. I don't think Jim Crane was wheeling and dealing to trade the everyday center fielder. That was a move that a forward-thinking front office led by James Click at the time, that's a move that one of them make, and you're like, at the outset, you're like, oh, like, what? And then as you start to think, you're like, oh man, this could help. And now you have Yainer Diaz for the next 5 years. You had Phil Maton for a relatively cost-controlled Phil Maton for 3 years, and he was really good in your bullpen. That's one. And then another one that Jim Crane inherently had to be involved in. That same year, they gave one of the biggest bargain contracts currently on the books right now when they gave Yordan Alvarez 6 years and $115 million. That's the second biggest contract in franchise history, which, as we just talked about, if you're giving out the biggest or the second biggest contracts in franchise history, the owner is inherently going to be involved. So I would imagine Jim Crane had some say in that one. The fact that they were able to keep Yordan Alvarez out of arbitration, where the money can get outlandish. They bought out, I believe, 2 of his free agent years. And you look at what he is making salary-wise, and it is one of the biggest bargains in baseball for his production. And it has kept them out of, like, let's say everything else follows suit. Like they make the same mistakes with Montero and Abreu. They had the same injuries, same dead money situations everywhere else. Like, the fact that they have Yordan Alvarez on that deal has saved them from further payroll hell. And I think those are the two moves. When you were talking about that, those are the two that popped in my head. I was like, those are the kind of moves that one that Jim Crane was involved with, one that he wasn't, that kind of spoke to me as the ones that last 5 to 7 years you look at and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, the extension of Alvarez too has to come from an owner that cares about the team, right? Because if otherwise, if it's just who's this second or third year guy that we're going to give $100 million to, obviously any of us who are watching baseball are like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I think Astros fans might take for granted that is not the case of a lot of sports owners who are literally just absent or are suing each other in the case of the Padres, right? Like that's not how every team operates. So yes, there's always a grass is greener situation. But that's why I say, you would rather your owner be interested and involved in the team than not.
And let's give Jim Crane some credit too. Like, he knows baseball. Like, he pitched at the University of Central Missouri. I believe he is still their single season strikeout leader. He still has a record at the University of Central Missouri. I can't remember what it is. It's either wins or strikeouts in a single season. Probably should have looked that up before this, but that would make this an actually good podcast. So we need to keep people guessing on that. But he knows the game. Like, this is not a situation where this is a guy that is coming at it from a complete ignorant angle of not knowing what's going on. He can watch the game and understand, look, he may not be in tune with the analytics, the way that the analytic movement has taken over baseball in the last 15 or 20 years. He may view the game differently, but inherently the man understands the game. And I think there's something to be said about that too, that this is a guy that has played the game before. It's a guy that has played it at a high level. I mean, you play college baseball, you're playing it at a high level. And I think there's something to be commended there, that this is a guy coming at it from that angle.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It could be a lot worse. Now, you again, theoretically want to allow your smart front office to make smart moves. And again, that hasn't been handicapped. Like, it's not like we're hearing, well, maybe you're just keeping these from us, but it's not like we're hearing, leaks of, oh, we had all of this in place, we had these trades in place, but then it was nixed by ownership, which happens, right? Like those things happen. Like, I mean, even trading Kyle Tucker took Jim Crane's approval, and he knew that he would get that doesn't make the Astros look good when that happens, but you have to understand that it makes the most sense for them to have, long-term success, right? So again, that's another example of somebody who's, involved in the sport and is caring about the roster, understanding what needs to happen in order to have some sustained success. And as we were talking about, look, the Astros roster is not anywhere near the dominance that we saw, 5-6 years ago. But there's not really that many good teams, right? I mean, there's the Dodgers, there's a huge gap, right? Then there's like the Mets, the Yankees. Like, it's not like you look at this and go like, oh, the Astros are flailing. There's 15 teams in front of them. Like, it is not difficult to squint your eyes and go like, oh, they're, going to win the AL West by 4 games and then make it to the ALCS or whatever. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it does not come with the same level of like dominance and expectation that we saw 5 years ago, which of course is unsustainable outside of the Dodgers, I guess.
Yeah, the American League's not good. Like the American League, like you've got the Yankees, you've got the Astros, you've got this, depending on your feelings on the American League Central. I mean, the American League Central did knock the Astros out of the playoffs last year, but I mean, those are 3 teams in the Royals, the Guardians, and the Tigers that the Royals have spent a lot more money in the last year and a half. The Tigers, maybe they spend some money on Alex Bregman, but they're not a team. They've got an albatross contract on their books that's looks about worse than anything that the Astros have ever handed out with Javi Baez. And then the Guardians are just, they're a development machine, a player development machine that's never going to run a huge payroll. So like you kind of look at it and like, yeah, there's talent here, but like the Astros still are they could roll into spring training tomorrow and they're either the favorite or right behind the Yankees, maybe the Orioles, maybe the Rangers. Like they're probably in that tier of teams that is going to be competing for the American League pennant. And it seems like, all offseason, all we've talked about is, what's left. They salary dumped Ryan Presley. They traded Kyle Tucker, and everyone wants to act like the sky is falling. Like, no, like this team's still pretty good. Like, are they as good as they were are they as good as they were in 2021, 2022? No. Is the window still as wide open as it was 3 years ago? No. But this is still a team that you have to understand, just get to the playoffs. Playoffs are a crapshoot. Like you saw last year, the Tigers were on an unreal heater and got to within a game of playing for a pennant. Like that Tigers team sold at the deadline. Like all you have to do is get in. And the Astros are built, in my opinion, to, have the sort of sustainability over 162 that getting in should not be a huge issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously the season happens, injuries can go a certain way. The pitching depth is scary. If you have an off year from Fromber, if you have, a couple of injuries, it can get dicey, but that's true of every team, right? You just don't go in going like, oh, there's 5 great starters, right? Like that very rarely happens on teams. And so, yeah, at this point, I'm like, all right, let's get Bregman signed somewhere, and let's get this thing started. I'm ready for baseball season.
Yeah, the one thing that can maybe undo all of the optimism we just exuded is a bad bullpen, because bad bullpens ruin everything in general. You can have a great lineup. You can have a great rotation. If you have a bad bullpen, if you can't finish games, if you can't close games, it's gonna be tough to overcome. And we didn't talk about this a ton in the last couple episodes because the Bregman stuff had been so dominating. But I asked you this before the show, and you now know the answer. You did not know before the show.
Yes,
So,
I did. I said it.
Oh,
How
you
dare
did?
you?
Okay.
How
So
dare you?
let's see how many listeners know. Um, I want to know which reliever in Astros spring training that is on the roster for spring training has the most major league service time. If you guess Rafael Montero, you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
And he is not on the 40-man roster. We said we weren't going to relitigate the winner. Here we are again. Rafael Montero is in the last year of a $34.5 million contract. He is, I can't confirm this based off of exhaustive research, but he is very likely the most expensive NRI in baseball this season. Now in a bullpen without Ryan Presley, like, he may play a pretty crucial factor because you know who's pitching the 8th inning. It's Brian Abreu. You know who's pitching the 9th inning with a lead. It's Josh Hader. I don't know who's pitching anything else. There are a lot of roles up for grabs, a lot of guys that you think you can count on, but I don't think this time last year going into spring training, we were talking about Taylor Scott, who had a 9 ERA in 38 big league innings before last year and then had a complete breakout. Was that a one-year wonder? Was that an anomaly? Is there going to be some regression? You look at Caleb Ort, you've got guys that showed out last year, but bullpens are so volatile. Bullpens are the variability is so wide that you never know what you're going to get. I guess, where is your confidence right now, Tyler, in this bullpen without Ryan Presley in it?
It's not super high. But again, you have to remember that there's probably 15 teams that don't even feel good about their closer, right? Like, the fact that the Astros have 2 closers is already, putting them in the top half of bullpens, regardless of what happens with everybody else, right? Like, yes, it's not nearly as exciting to know, like, oh, if you can get to the 6th inning, game's over because you got, Presley, Abreu, Hader, Montero when he was really good, right? Like, they did have a bullpen that was just locked down, but like you said, bullpens are so volatile. That's one of my favorite parts about baseball season, is finding out the 8 guys that we've never heard of before who become, like, big parts of the season and then completely disappear in the play. Like, that's really one of those ways that you can, like, test somebody. Like, did you watch the season, right? Like, you start name dropping, 6th, 7th inning bullpen guys that are never going to see the roster in the postseason, but that's who makes the season, over the course of 162 games. And so, yeah, they don't have anybody yet, but I nobody does, right? Like, no one's coming into the season. Like, can you name 3 people in anyone else's bullpen? It'd be weird. I mean, you probably can, but normal people can't, right?
No, the Guardians maybe, because that's the Guardians put it on a billboard that they had the best, and they did. They had a really good bullpen. They don't have much else other than Jose Ramirez. Let's name some guys. You got my head going on random relievers that helped out. Remember Andre Scrub?
Yeah,
walked 10 dudes per 9 innings.
Big old dude.
Somehow was getting outs in 2020 with no fans in the stands.
This is the year Josh James breaks out. I'm calling it.
Anoli Paredes.
8 years late. It's gonna happen.
Cy Sneed.
Oh yeah, great beard.
We can do this a while. Ken Emanuel.
Lefty.
I was doing I'll tease it a little bit. All of the beats at The Athletic, we had to write one fact about every pitcher in camp on our team. So I just finished doing the 33 pitchers that the Astros have in camp. Had to find a fun fact about each of them. It's a little harder than you think. I had never heard of about 10 of these.
I was going to say, I bet I could name 15 of them. Off the top of my head, there's no way I'd get close to 30.
So anyway, as I'm doing it, I got down to the bottom. They have 7 lefties in camp.
Hey,
Dusty Baker is somewhere just absolutely loving that. That dude begged. He begged James Click for left-handed pitching like his entire tenure. And then they went out and he traded for Brooks Raley, another guy we're just going to name drop because Brooks Raley.
Aggie legend.
So correct me. Can I call someone that went to Texas? I can't call them a former Aggie, right? That's against the cult code.
Yeah.
Why is that against?
Because you're not you're always an Aggie.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Are you a former Tiger? No, you still went there. You're still part of it.
I'm not currently one.
Well, it's because you don't get to wear your ring around all the time like we do. Looking super cool.
Did you have to do what beer did you use to like put your ring in to do the stupid thing where it hits your lip?
So I am not cool. I did it, but it mostly just spilled on myself. Me and my roommate did it, but the trick is you let it. You want it flat. You don't want to like pour 6 beers into a pitcher and then just chug that. So you like sit it out overnight, which makes it even worse. But I'm pretty sure it was like a natty light or something. It was not pleasant.
This sounds like why. So you're chugging warm natty, flat natty.
Well, no, you put it in the fridge, but just overnight, so it's not like, because otherwise you're just gonna puke all of the.
I mean, that sounds like the end result, no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. But look, I mean, as you know, when you work in the student media, I was there, but I'm not like as culty as I think a lot of people could be. But certainly that's still my school. I'm still real excited about it. But I always get excited about lefties. I mean, you mentioned 7 lefties. As a fellow lefty, I mean, I still remember Mike Gallo from my childhood days of watching him. I mean, I think he had like a 5.5 ERA with like a 60-mile-an-hour curveball, but I was like, that's peak athleticism right there coming out of the bullpen. So who are these lefties? I mean, I know we got Ort. What else?
Well, Caleb Ward is not left-handed. Caleb Ward is right-handed.
That's what I meant.
Brian King actually came up and pitched last year. Was actually really effective for them. I have to pull it up because I don't remember off the top of my head. There's a gentleman named Blake Wyman.
Okay.
He's a left-handed pitcher that's going to compete for a spot in camp, I believe.
He's going to have a sub-1 ERA in July, and we're going to be talking about this guy being like an extension candidate.
There's a fella named Steven Okert.
Okay.
He's 33 years old and has like a substantial major league service time. He's
okay.
Bennett Souza, remember him? He was like the topic du jour for like 3 weeks in 2023 when we needed something to write about. They had like clinched
like Scrabble last name, right? It's like a bunch of letters in there, or is it just S-O-U-S?
It's S-O-U-S-A.
Okay. There we go.
The Blake Wyman fellow, and then another man named Brandon Walter.
Okay.
He was a Red Sox farmhand at one point. Colton Gordon is a left-handed pitcher. He's a starter, but he actually got on the 40-man roster. They protected him from the Rule 5 draft this winter, so he may actually contribute at some point this year, but he's a starter. And then they have that guy named Framber Valdez too. He's halfway decent. I don't think he'll be in the bullpen at any point.
Like I said, it's going to be fun looking back in 3 months when like 3 of the guys that we just named are unbelievable. And we're like, can you believe, where would the Astros be without Blake Wyman or whatever you just said?
I mean, it's the same thing we do with Taylor Scott last year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the best part about baseball seasons. We have no idea until it gets started. And all it takes is like 15 good innings in a row, and suddenly you're a hero, and it rules. It's so much fun.
And I need to be a little more open in my viewpoint of how this works. So last spring training, candidly, you go into the big league clubhouse in spring training, and they're bringing like 60 something guys to camp. So like first 2 weeks before they make any cuts, like it is crowded. You see faces, you're like, who in the hell is that? Like you're trying to like follow guys to their locker to say, all right, that's that guy. And Taylor Scott was just somebody that like, had a random locker in the middle of the clubhouse, couldn't have picked his face out. Like his name he just was there the whole camp. Like he never got cut. And I was like, I kept looking, I was like, I should maybe talk to him at some point. But it's also one of these things, like as a reporter, like you don't want to overwrite like the stuff that's not going to happen. You're basically just like, all right, like stick to the stars, stick to the guys with the cachet, stick to the people that are going to give you a good return on your investment, basically, in readership, clicks, all that stuff. And you're kind of just like, oh, like Taylor Scott's throwing well in Grapefruit League games, like cool. Like half these guys and he's facing in Grapefruit League games, like AA guys backing up the big league guys. And then like he makes the team and I'm like, oh wow. And then I realized like I haven't talked to this guy like all the time. And so like the first time I ever spoke to him was like 2 weeks into the season. And I think he kind of resented that because like I'd been around in spring training for 8 weeks and just like, oh, like he'll flame out. But no, he didn't. Congratulations. Taylor Scott, huge year for him. He may be the 7th inning guy this year. Could be Rafael Montero, who is paid.
Yeah, I mean, if he comes to spring training and doesn't blow his arm off, I assume the Astros would like to have him on the roster at some point, right? I mean, you're already paying him. Like, what does the process look like? They have to clear space for him to get back on because he's not on the 40-man.
You're talking Montero?
Yeah.
They have space on their 40-man because they just salary dumped a guy off of their 40-man.
I remember that.
So they have an opening on their 40-man roster, so they could add him. He's gonna have to win a spot. Like, I mean, it would make sense that if they've got $11.5 million invested in him, like extracting any sort of value out of him would seem ideal. And like we said earlier, like he's got more major league service time than any reliever in camp. Like he is battle tested. He's been in big games. He's pitched late in big games. And that is something that is not in abundance within this team. So there's a very easy path to where if he just comes to camp, and I'm not saying he has to light the world on fire, but if he comes to camp and looks competent, if he comes to camp and like they like the stuff, like he's getting some outs in Grapefruit League games and he's throwing strikes, there's a very clear path for Rafael Montero to make this roster and maybe pitch leverage innings. Now, I wouldn't say that that's the most likely outcome, that he's your 7th inning guy, but I mean, this guy was pitching leverage innings like 2 years ago. Like he's not that far removed from it. And we've talked about how volatile relievers are. Like it would not shock me at all if he, after having the 2 seasons he's had, if he comes back and can harness that 2022 form. And the Astros need it. Like they like some of the stuff they have, some of the arms they have, but like they need guys in that bullpen that have been there, that have skins on the wall. And Rafael Montero is like foremost among them.
We'll see. I'm excited. I'm ready. Like let's fast forward. There's like 3 weeks before anything happens. We're just waiting on Bregman to do something, and that's going to kind of wrap up the off season. But I'm ready for it to get going. It's that time in the sports calendar where there's nothing going on. So I'm ready. Let's get spring training going.
I can't believe Rafael Montero got you that riled up. Got you that invigorated.
He was good enough that somebody gave him $34 million a couple years ago. He can't be that bad.
Who was that? What idiot did that?
I don't know. Doesn't matter. The point is that someone did, and so he must be good.
We also got 38 minutes and 58 seconds into this and have never mentioned Forrest Whitley. He could probably be in the bullpen too. Large,
him.
Strapping young man. Speaking of someone they've invested a lot of money in that need to extract value out of, Forrest Whitley. Who knows? Forrest Whitley could be pitching the 6th inning for the Houston Astros in 2025. If he is, we'll be there to watch it. If he's not, we probably will not be in Sugarland to watch Forrest Whitley pitch. But we will be wherever the major league team is, whether that's in West Palm Beach, whether that's in Houston, whether that is on the road, wherever they go, we will be there. So we'll keep coming to you with as much content as we can. The minute Alex Bregman signs, you will have an emergency podcast where we will either stare in utter confusion the fact that he ended up back here, or remember the great 9 years Alex Bregman gave this city and this franchise. So be on the lookout for that whenever Alex Bregman signs. We'll get Josh Reddick back this week, probably in a more conventional locale than the last time we saw him, probably in a more a better outfit than the last time. But who knows? Josh is as volatile and variable as most major league relievers. So we will see you soon. Please rate and review us on Apple. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. Appreciate the outpouring of support, and we'll be back soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.